Steve is a publisher in England, and he's published, this is the second book of mine that he's published.
Nice.
Flash fiction, and he publishes all kinds, not just flash fiction, fiction as well.
Okay. So,
he also has Inspired magazine, which is an online magazine, and publishes, you know, all sorts of things, as Sandra said. He just did my novella also.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
He's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wish he was here. This would be the first time I've actually met him.
Yeah.
okay, well, we're going to read then. And
Okay.
Francine, you're going to start this off.
Okay. So I'm going to be reading from, I'm Francine Witt, by the way. I'm going to be reading from Sandra's book, Below Ground, which I had the pleasure of writing a blurb for. I think we all did here, all the readers did. So I'll be reading Lavender Bell. Of course, I don't have Sandra's lovely accent, so, you know, you just have to settle for my quasi-New York thing here. So, okay, Lavender Bell. The fever woman spent her days wandering the streets with her shopping bag, always in the same droopy black coat, black ribbons dangling from her black felt hat. Whenever we saw her, my mother would whisper, "Don't stare." But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't drag my eyes off the bag of flaccid veined flesh hanging from her jaw to her collarbone. "And don't call her the fever woman," my mother said. "It's not nice." When I was old enough to be curious about such things, I asked my mother where she lived, what her name was, if she had a family. My mother's response was, "The poor soul isn't right in the head. Keep away from her." I formed the impression that the fever woman had always existed in some kind of stasis, a nameless black wraith trailing clouds of not to be talked about dread. It was the ribbons that were synonymous in my mind with the stuff in the drain. I saw it there when the wand from my fairy doll fell out of my hand into the drain as I was showing it to Angela and Jill and explaining how I would work magic with it. We peered through the metal grill into the stinky dark space and could see the wand's little silver star sticking up through the mass of slimy weeds. Angela poked a stick through and tried to edge the wand upwards so I could reach down and grab it. As she did so, a dozen tiny frogs exploded from the sludge. One of the neighbors heard us squealing and told us to get away. "There's all sorts in there," she said. "Disgusting stuff. If you touch it, you'll get a fever." Next day, the fever woman sat in front of me in the bus. Up till then, she had just been a smelly old woman who muttered to herself as she walked along the street. Now, here she was right in front of me. I was relieved she had her back to me so I couldn't see the fleshy thing wobbling on her face. However, her hat was at the level of my eyes. With a sick feeling, I realized the black ribbons looked exactly like the stuff in the drain. I imagined her fishing around in the drain, scooping out the fever weeds and sticking them on her hat. My conviction grew that fever had caused the growth on her face. At school, I drew a picture of the fever woman in her worn-out shoes, her crinkly black stockings, and her black coat that she never seemed to change. I drew tiny frogs jumping out of the weeds on her fever hat, and then finally drew the lump on her face. I filled it with a pink crayon and drew the bulging veins in blue and purple. Then underneath the drawing, I wrote in capitals, "The Fever Woman." I was so absorbed that I didn't hear the teacher pause by my desk until I heard her sigh. She whispered, "It's a tumor. The doctors can't take it off or she would bleed to death." I once heard someone say she'd driven an ambulance in the war when she was a young woman. I can't remember what they said her name was. Something rather beautiful. I didn't know which disturbed me most, the revelation that the fever woman had but once been young, or that she had a name. As I trailed home from school thinking about this, I saw a group of boys throwing stones at something on the ground and hitting it with sticks. My skin broke out in cold sweat. I'd seen those boys beating little dogs with sticks, pulling the heads off baby mice, boasting about drowning kittens. Usually, I kept well clear of them, and I was just about to run in the opposite direction when I saw what it was they were tormenting. The fever woman was cowering on the ground. One of the boys snatched her hat and trampled on it. I saw her wispy gray hair sticking out of her head as though it were electrified. Her terrified eyes, urine running down her legs, soaking her shoes. One of the boys yelled, "Look, she's pissing herself." And they all stopped to stare and scream with laughter. Before I knew what I was doing, I charged up to the nearest boy, grabbed the stick from his hand, and thrashed him wherever I could reach until he fell to the ground, howling. Then, growling like a dog, I chased after the others. I was 10 feet tall with wild hair and red revolving eyeballs. The way those boys bolted told me that's what they saw too. I turned back to help the fever woman to her feet. She batted my hands away and spat at me, screeching something incomprehensible. She grabbed her hat, jammed it on her head, glared at me with two fierce pinpricks of eyes, and limped off down the road. I didn't see her again until 10 years later when I came home from university. She got off the bus as I got on. Same clothes, same hat, same fierce eyes. But the tumor now hung below her chest. I smiled at her. She ignored me. 6 months after that, my mother sent me 2 pieces of paper. The first one was my childhood drawing of the fever woman. I hadn't known she kept it all these years. The second was an obituary. At last, I knew her name. I wrote it on the drawing in big blue letters. That's The Fever Woman by Sandra Arnold. I'm sorry, Lavender Bell
No, that
by
was
Sandra
lovely.
Arnold. I'm sorry.
Lovely reading. Lovely reading. Thank you.
Great
Thank you
story.
so much, Sandra. And I'm going to read one of mine
Mhm.
now. That was like quite a moving story. That was beautiful. This is called, because, in the spirit of summer, I just thought I'd read something I had written a few summers ago. And it was in an Atticus review. In the pool at the Lala Motel, in the deep end, where Charlie told me to wait, holding a Mai Tai maybe, something with a bit of sass. Our honeymoon, it was. The night before the wedding and Charlie pacing the floor, I called my Florida mother, who said jitters and sorry to miss. The wedding itself, Charlie, the last to arrive, whiskey on his tuxedo breath, his best man nudging him towards me like a beer. And the honeymoon, one of those pay-by-the-hour places just out of town. Charlie mixed up the Mai Tai from a gas station packet, ginger ale from a vending machine. It was noon, and Charlie still hadn't touched me. Saving himself is what he said. I always wondered why he never wanted to kiss me, or why he even wanted to get married. It's not like he lost a bet. The pool, a skim of leaves and small insects, most of them dead, but some of them trying to make it to the edge. Guess no one swims here much, Charlie winked. And when he saw it, Charlie winked when he saw it, when he walked me down to the steps, cold, then colder, then cold. Let's walk in up to our next, Charlie said, taking my hand towards the deep part where probably no other person had ever been. Wait here, he said. I want to get my camera. Every so often, a stray couple wandered out through the motel door and dipped a toe in the pool. Every so often, a fly made it close to the rim, maybe 3 breaths left, his wings soggy and useless now, too heavy even for flight.
Thank you, Franny. Sandra, do you have a list of people that you want to read in certain order? Or do you, no? You can't hear me because I can't hear you.
Yeah, any order?
Okay. Well, let's pick on Niles next.
Okay.
He's going to be leaving the country for tennis.
Yeah, it is. I'm leaving the country. First of all, let me say this. I love Sandra's book. I was fortunate enough to be able to blurb the back cover of this with Francine and others. And I have to say too, Francine, I recall that story you just read from your collection. Am I right? Or did I read that in a publication? I can't remember. Maybe you posted the Atticus review and I read it there. But anyway, I love that story too. And Sandra, congratulations on this new collection. Like everything you write, it's beautiful. I learned so much from all of you when I read your work. So thank you for sharing it, and thank you for allowing me to be here and to read it. I'm reading, this piece is titled "The Earth is Full of Bones," and this is in the new collection. I actually, Sandra, I have a confession to make. I watched Alone last night on television, and then I watched after it became very late, and then they had Australia Alone. So I was thinking about you. And then when I went through your book today to pick a selection to read, I read several pieces, but realized that I couldn't pronounce some of the words because I mean, they are English words, right? But they're that Australia, New Zealand kind of language, and I didn't know how to pronounce some of them, so I chose one that I could pronounce. The earth is full of bones. The new school was meant to be a fresh start, but the pattern quickly reverted. Just ignore them, her foster mother said. They'll soon get bored. So every afternoon she headed home across the bridge, eyes down, ignoring the 7 boys. But they refused to be ignored, and there was no sign of boredom when they started pelting her with stones. She decided a change of tactics was needed. When one of them came at her with a dead rat, she whipped out a knife. 6 of the boys dropped their stones and ran. The 7th stayed, waving the rat in her face. She pointed the knife at his throat. He backed away until he was hand up against the rail of the bridge. She heard the whistle of the train just before she pushed him over. The coroner said she'd been an exemplary witness. The 6 boys maintained silence. She maintained years of invisibility until she could leave. Many jobs, many countries, many lives. 30 years later, she returned. She went back to stand on the bridge one last time to measure how far she'd traveled. Rounding the corner, she saw an unfamiliar scene. No bridge, no railway tracks. New houses filled the spaces. New children filled the gardens. She stopped roaming and bought a house with a garden. When she began to dig, she found the earth was full of bones, human ash, pets loved long ago, roots entwined in lost rings, moonlight trapped in tall grass, shredded dreams drifting like smoke alongside scents of soil and sheep, sighs of the newly dead, cries of the newly born. She remembered the songs her mother used to sing in the before time. She planted the songs and listened to the garden filled with music. I love that story. I love all your stories. And then the second piece from Sandra's collection that I'd like to read is titled Writing the Right Stuff. It's a very, very short piece. I guess it would be microfiction, but it's something I think all of us as writers can relate to. I hear this all of the time whenever I go and read or speak somewhere, and people come up to me. Stan says you're a writer. Yep. Nice job. Sitting on your bum all day, waiting for the inspiration. Well, what name do you write under? My own. Never heard of you. I like to read that crime guy. What's his name? And the wife likes that romance authoress. What's her face? Maybe try your hand at that, eh? So what do you write? Literary fiction. Never heard of it. What's his name is a millionaire. Worth giving that a go, if you ask me. Oh, well. I won a couple of writing competitions in high school. Might take it up again when I retire. Bit of extra money. I'll bring them round tomorrow for you to have a look at. I think all of us can relate to that one, Sandra. Thank you and congratulations to you.
Thank you. That was lovely. I didn't wait to read that.
At least I could read all of the words in my Southern accent.
Well, you
That
know,
was lovely.
really interesting to hear you talk about reading a book and not being able to pronounce all the words. Not that I have any trouble listening to you, but I'm sure there are a few people that you've thrown off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I just did an interview, Paul, and I sent this to Sandra with William at Writers Drinking Whiskey. And I told him about the time we came to New York and went to KGB, and you were there, and Matthew was there from California. Craig Fishbane was there. And I went up to Craig after I read and introduced myself to him, and he said, of course, he had seen me on the Flash Bomb Zoom that we did. And he said, I had no idea you were not from England. Your name, I thought, was a British name. And then when your mouth opened and all of that Southern came out, he said, I couldn't believe it. So anyway, it is true. But thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Niles. That was lovely.
You're up next. If you unmute, you can be up next.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of that. Who's next?
Karen? Here you go.
Okay, thank you. I too was honored to be asked to write a blurb for Sandra's marvelous collection. Really just a stunning collection here. I chose Behind Closed Doors. I can read most of the words too. There are a few that are Maori, I think. In their first year together, Ariel barely noticed that Terry never closed doors. never took his shoes off before trailing dirt into their flat, left his clothes on the floor, left dishes to drain in the sink, left windows open so he could hear the birds, even though this let the flies in. In their second year, when she did begin to notice, she told herself it didn't matter because he brought her flowers, was kind to animals, told her all the time that he loved her. In their third year, it mattered. When she tried to talk to him about it, he would go sad and silent. So one day she left. 30 years passed. Doors stayed shut. Crockery stayed lined up on shelves. Floors shone. Clothes hung in color-coordinated rows in her wardrobe. At work, her rise in HR was meteoric. Straight lines, timetables, schedules, work completed before deadline. She told herself she had achieved her goal of the perfect life. If she sometimes felt lonely or found herself thinking about Terry, she worked longer hours. Then one day, a colleague showed her an obituary in the newspaper. Sorry about that. Okay. Then one day, a colleague showed her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then one day, a colleague showed her an obituary in the newspaper, a photograph. Is that the guy you lived with way back? She asked. Ariel found the time and place of the funeral. Inside the church, an open coffin. Ariel's sharp intake of breath. So, still no closed doors? The woman next to her leaned across and whispered, when he was little, his mother used to lock him in a cupboard, the cow. So we all knew he had this thing about closed doors. Ariel looked into the face of one of Terry's cousins. The cousin didn't recognize her. He never had another relationship after the love of his life left him, the cousin said. She was a tidiness freak. You gotta wonder where that came from, too, don't you? That's it. And I'm going to read a very short piece that I had published in Inspired, called Dream Vacation. We did not reach the water's edge before Billy slipped beneath the surly waves. We did not watch instead of waiting, stand quiet instead of yelling. There was no final tiny bob poking up through the watery veneer that we rushed to retrieve. Our hearts did not pound in our chests, did not explode with panic, regret, shame. We did not drink the elixir together, did not lose perspective, see things that did not exist. We didn't board the plane the following day, leaving our childhood friend floating up a tributary of the mighty Amazon River. Ayahuasca adventure behind us. That's it. Thank you, Sandra.
Thanks. Thank you, Karen. That was lovely.
It's all lovely. I'm going to be embarrassed to read my own story. Brad Rose is next, and Brad, we all know, was born in LA and lives in Boston. That's enough of an intro for him.
Thanks, Paul. Well, congratulations, Sandra. I have yet to get your book, but I'm very motivated having heard these really wonderful stories. So I have 400 things to read, but I guess I'll just read one. It's called Sad Marianne. I'm a secret message to myself. According to the rules, the brain is made up of 170 billion cells. It doesn't matter if you're below sea level or above sea level. You can still have lots of ghost fun. Like a jellyfish or a glass of water, it's nearly see-through. Marianne says that considering my modus operandi, I'm lucky as an uninhabited planet. She's an excellent mind reader. Yesterday, we were exchanging chemicals and talking about dinosaur angels. Sure, they existed, but now they're extinct. Marianne says that's why they're not in the Bible anymore. Of course, you've got to make up your own mind about things, so I'm doing what I can to improve the neighborhood, like locking myself out of my house until I capture all my own emissions. I told Marianne about the way things used to be around here. You know, peaceful, normal, and calm, like in the old days. And for no reason, just like that, she wept. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Paul.
Gloria Mindak. She's got a new collection called Grief Touch the Sky at Night. Glassfire Press. And a lot of credentials.
Thanks, Paul.
But you're,
And oh, I'm sorry. Is it okay to go?
you bet.
Okay. This is part of an installation in 10 most dangerous household objects, and it happens to be scissors, and I didn't know how to write about scissors, and Francine's prompt workshop this week helped. So here goes. The scissors are all shiny, sharp, and colorful, standing up in the cup. Sick of being stuck and never used, the scissors jump onto the table, jump down to the floor, and cut their way into the next room. When Doris picks them up, wondering how they got there, she gets cut. Blood drips on the floor. The scissors snap closed to keep from laughing, but just for now. They are shoved back into the cup. A Band-Aid is put on her hand, blood cleaned up, and the scissors attack again. All because a hem was not sewn correctly. The scissors sliced through the material, cutting it in strips, ruining it, then hops back into the cup. Doris cannot figure out how this happened. The scissors will never be good again, loves destruction and promises to keep doing this no matter where they end up. At night, while she and her husband are asleep, the scissors cut Doris's hair uneven, cut a streak down the husband's head, cuts up the rugs and slices the drapes into long strings hanging. Doris was perplexed and threw the scissors out. At the dumps, the scissors were very busy until Sue took them home. Then it all starts again. Sue's hand was cut. The cycle repeats and repeats. A cutting for everyone when it is your time. Thank you.
Very good, Bob. Andrea, are you going to read tonight?
No, I just came to listen tonight. I've been on vacation.
Okay. Are you going to read, Paul?
I have something short, but I cannot read. Because we have.
You're not going to read? Oh,
Pardon me?
sorry, did you say yes, you are, or you're not? Are you going to read?
I'll read something short, but you go ahead and read, and if there's time, then I'll read. If there's not,
I'll read mine then. Okay. So from Below Ground, which was published in the end of June, this one. And most of the stories are a little bit dark. You know, I'm very interested in the way people deal with situations, and I feel that some people can be really damaged by various situations and other people can be healed by them. So I've chosen two short ones tonight to read, and they're both about teeth, for some reason thinking about teeth. This one is called The Sacrifice of Teeth. She had a photographic memory, so she could recall whole conversations, the expressions on people's faces, the tone of their voices, the setting, the weather, the colors, the smells. If she needed a detail in the telling of a tale, all she had to do was rewind the film in her head. What she wasn't good at remembering were numbers and directions. So when her father asked her to deliver a bag of freshly dug potatoes to a house in a different neighborhood and collect payment for them, she ended up at the wrong house. Part of the reason for this was that she was paying too much attention to the hated fur-lined boots on the end of her legs as she trudged through the snow, stepping on frozen puddles, seeking solace in the splintered ice glinting in the winter sun. Her father's tongue lashing had included many words in response to her objections to the ugly brown boots, the most incomprehensible being that the red boots she'd set her heart on would attract the wrong sort of attention. But the word that slid behind her eyes and made them water was sacrifice. He'd been saving up to buy new dentures, he said, and her warm feet came at the cost of his teeth. So she pulled on the brown boots and zipped up her lips. And there she was, knocking on the wrong door, making cloud breaths in the frozen air, snapping icicles off the black branch of an overhanging tree. And when the door opened, she explained her mission, and the man told her to leave the potatoes on the doorstep and come inside. He told her to leave her wet boots in the hall and showed her into a room with green walls and a green sofa and a green chair and a china cabinet. He told her to sit on the sofa and wait. She heard his keys rattling as he locked the front door. There were no pictures on the walls, no photographs. The china cabinet was empty. A mouse trap with a severed tail poked out from beneath the chair. Snowflakes drifted past the sash window and clung to the glass. A hawk glided in the white sky, a rabbit hanging from its claws. The room was cold, as if no one had breathed in it for a long time. It smelt of dead dreams. It filled with the sound of her thudding heart. And as the door to the green room opened, she sprang across the bare boards to the window. She left the potatoes on the doorstep and her boots in the hall and slipped and tripped all the way home. By the time she fell through her own front door, her feet were blue. Her father's face was a storm cloud. His words were lightning strikes. Her teeth rattled in her jaw, locking her words inside. And thank you.
Love
And
this. So terrifying. And it's terrifying to hear it today, even though I heard it a few years ago when you published it in Miramichi Flash. Still terrifying. It's fabulous.
Thank you. And the second one is called The Tyranny of Teeth. Delphine's teacher cracked a joke. Delphine didn't smile because she didn't think it was funny. The teacher said, Oh dear, Delphine, I do feel sorry for you. At the age of 7, you ought to know what humor is. She brought her out to the front of the class. Now, everyone, let's show Delphine how we express humor. Her aunt kept saying, "Cat got your tongue?" Her uncle kept saying, "Why have you got your face on upside down?" Her grandfather kept saying, "No, that's a face that would turn milk sour." In university, a lecturer asked, "Delphine, why do you look so serious?" "It's a serious subject," she said. "Yeah, but it wouldn't hurt to crack a smile now and then, would it?" The soon-to-be ex-boyfriend said, "Smile, Delphine." "Why, did you say something funny?" "No, but women look better when they smile." During feedback after her first teaching practice, the supervisor said, "You smiled only once during that whole lesson, and the effect on the children was electric. You need to smile more often." She left teacher training and found a job in a museum where the bones of dinosaurs didn't care about smiles, nor did the curator of the museum. So she married him. On her wedding day, her new mother-in-law said to the photographer, "Say something to make her smile. She's quite pretty when she smiles." The photographer looked at Delphine. "Now, you don't want your wedding photos to look as though you were at a funeral, do you? Ha ha." He pointed his camera. A new colleague in the lizard department said, "Hey there, babe, it might never happen." "Get used to it," she said. His smirk didn't entirely cover his annoyance. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Delphine said to her husband over the candlelit dinner he'd prepared, "You know why I love you? You've never once told me I should smile." His brow creased. "Why on earth would I do that?" He died when a brontosaurus reconstruction fell on him, the day before they were due to fly to Italy to celebrate their silver wedding anniversary. At his funeral, his sister told Delphine, "At least now you'll have an excuse for wearing that face." "Oh, you mean my resting bitch face?" Delphine said. "That's a highly inappropriate comment to make at my brother's funeral." "Fuck off," Delphine said. On her 60th birthday, the lawyer read out her mother's will. It meant Delphine need never work again. She did, however, because she loved dinosaurs. When she cleared her mother's house, she found inside her jewelry case a small pink box with Delphine written on it in her mother's cursive script. Inside the box was her first tooth and a silver coin. She placed the box on her bedside table so she could look inside it every night before she drifted off to sleep. Over the next 10 years, her teeth began to crack. The dentist filled them with amalgam for a while, but eventually he extracted them all and replaced them with dentures. The night before her 80th birthday, she lit a candle on her bedside table. On one side of the candle, she positioned her dentures in their glass of water with the sterident. On the other side, she placed the silver coin. She put her baby tooth under her pillow. Inside the glass, 2 rows of pearly white teeth grinned at her. Delphine poked her tongue out at them. She lay on her bed, watching the flickering flame of the candle throw shadows across the walls. She reached her hand under the pillow and felt the tooth. Her mother's voice was just a whisper at first. "In the morning, Delphine, you'll find something beautiful." Thank you. That's it.
It was terrific, Sandra.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to bring this down a notch. So one sentence, 200-word story called Like the Back of My Hand. She wasn't looking when the lights went out, so I quickly slid out of my desk and swiped the crayon from Mrs. Fisher's brand new box of 64 Crayolas that she bragged about when the class started. It was kind of with a built-in sharpener, but it was too dark to tell what color I'd swipe. But the more I waved it around and sniffed it, the more I was sure it was blood red, not candy apple red or Mrs. Fisher's Friday date lipstick that she'd wear when chaperoned our 8th grade prom. And not only the color, but whatever was leaking from it made me want to taste it and smell it more. But I held it off, and it leaked onto my hand in all its stickiness and crept slowly across my wrist and down my arm. And the more it leaked, the more I turned. And the more I turned, the faster I turned. And the faster I turned, the more I turned. And the more I turned, the dizzier I turned. And the dizzier I turned, the more I was sure that the color was blood red. And then the lights came on, and I stared at my hand and arm that had been leaking and covered with blood. And I wondered how in the world I could have been so wrong for so long. I
That was lovely, thank you.
apologize for ruining your night.
No, you didn't.
It was great listening to your stories. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sandra.
I just want to tell everybody that in August, we have the same problem of a split month. And so we're going to take August off and go back to September. All right. If you want to comment on it or say something about it, feel free to write me. But it's a pleasure to see you all and hear you all, even Brad.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Congratulations again, Sandra. It's really
Thank
great.
you.
It's great just coming and listening, you know, you take in it in on a completely different level as an audience. So it's
Yes.
been fun.
Well, you know something, Andrea, you're very kind that way because you often do this. Support the group and support the readers, and don't always feel that you have to read or don't want to read or whatever. It's just nice of you to do this.
Oh, well, you're very nice. It might say something about my social life.
Well, that I'm not going to speak to, but your writing is phenomenal. So
No, my husband doesn't mind eating at 5:30. So
okay.
anyhow, well, anyway, have a great summer, everybody, and
Have a great
happy
winter,
writing.
Sandra.
And yeah, we'll see you guys in this September.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Hopefully the world will still be here.
And congratulations, Sandra. Bye.
Yes, we
Thank
can
you.
hope.
Congratulations, Sandra. We can always go to New Zealand, right?
We have to stop in Tennessee first.
There
Right.
you
Well,
go.
yeah, we can just disappear in Tennessee.
Yeah.
You're
Right, in the
welcome
mon-
anytime.
All
You're
right.
welcome anytime.
All right. Take
See you
care.
Take care,
all.
everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Everybody, bye.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.